Hey everyone, Chris Stoltz coming at you once again from the MuppetStuff Museum. And today I have a very special guest, my friend Chris O'Connor from the UK, who will be talking to us about his recent traveling adventures to the Great Con-Junction out in LA. Well, I'm going to talk to him about my recent adventures to the Great D23 Muppet Christmas Carol 30th anniversary celebration in New York, which was held the same weekend. All right, and without further ado, here is Chris O'Connor. So we have Chris and Chris. I made sure I put my last name there so they wouldn't get us confused, because otherwise
I didn't do that.
Two Chris's having a conversation, and I think it's going to get crazy. So we were just talking backstage real quickly. I should tell everybody that the two of us have been virtual friends for what, like a decade or so?
If not more.
If not more. Probably from the Muppet Central days, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's pushing almost 20 years, I think.
I joined there in, I think it was 98. I joined there.
98. Yeah, it's let's don't age ourselves too much here.
No, okay. It was 5 years ago.
So yeah, it's certainly been a while that we've known each other, but this is literally the first time we've had a conversation live like this, back and forth. Usually it's just through text or through social media or something. So this is a treat for both of us. It's a first all around. I'm sure everyone can see. I have my little corner of Muppet stuff. Chris has his corner of Muppet stuff. I love your beaker back there, by the way. That's a custom made beaker, right?
Yeah, it's custom made.
That's amazing. I love him. He's freaking out. I love it. All right, so the reason we're here to talk about the Henson events we attended. So you attended the Great Con-Junction out in LA, right?
In LA, yeah.
And I was at the Muppet Christmas Carol 30th anniversary event put out by D23 in Queens, New York at the Museum of the Moving Image. And both were the same weekend, which was kind of bizarre that they had two events on both coasts celebrating two separate Muppet/Henson anniversaries. And I didn't go that far. I mean, New York is only about an hour and a half from my house. You, my friend, traveled a great distance to be at the Great Con-Junction.
Yeah, it was 11 hours flight from London, but we kind of turned it into a week's holiday as well. So it was worth it. LA had always been on the list of places to go. So when this opportunity came up, I was like, I've got to do this. The thought of not doing it and then going to LA another time and just like seeing the Henson studios and stuff outside and not being able to go in, I was just like, nah, I'm doing this. But I only went to New York in March, so it was back to the States fairly soon. Not really what was planned, but it's done, and it was absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad I did it.
I had these opposite, thought process, but the opposite planning process, because I really wanted to go. This is the second time this convention has gone on. The Thames Con puts this on, and they did the first Great Con-Junction back in, I think it was March of 2020, before the world changed forever.
Yeah.
Just literally like right before everything shut down, they had just wrapped this thing up. And I was thinking the same thing. Well, I really should go to England. I've not been there before. And that is really the time to go, because all the performers are going to be there, and you can kind of see, where all these things were filmed. It's all right there. And then for whatever reason, I'm like, but it's, I don't know if I want to do this. I was hearing ththis rumors about this virus. I'm like, do I really want to go out and be out in another country in case this thing gets really bad? All this stuff. So I didn't go. And then literally like 2 weeks later, it's like, oh, there's no more flights. No one's going anywhere. Be in your house. Don't talk to anybody, and don't touch anything. So now it's still an issue. It's still concerned somewhat, but thankfully it's not as big of a deal as it has been in the past. So live events are back. You made the trip much longer than my hour and a half or so trip. And all right, so tell me about the Great Con-Junction in LA. It looked fantastic from what you had told me about and what I saw online.
So it was a 2-day event. So it was Saturday and Sunday, and you had various levels of tickets. You could just buy a ticket to go to the event on Saturday, or to go on Sunday, or to go to both. But there was also the party at the Jim Henson lot in Hollywood, which was included with the weekend tickets and various other ticket tiers. And there was also the opportunity to go to Jim Henson's Creature Shop. Now, as much of a fan as I am, I didn't actually realize that the Creature Shop wasn't at the Jim Henson Company lot. It's in a completely different area. I think it was like 10, 12 miles away. So that was interesting to see. The event.
I'm sorry, I don't want to.
No, go for it.
A small part of the Creature Shop on the Henson lot, just for light puppet building, a couple things, and the big Creature Shop where they do like the extra technical large creatures, that kind of stuff. That's what you're talking. That's what's off that down the street. I've not been there either. I was an intern at the Henson Company, so I got to see, I got to be on the lot daily for a few months. I got to sneak into the Henson recording studio and see where they keep types of stuff. All that kind of great stuff. But I have never actually been to the Creature Shop, so that's a whole other experience. So please elaborate on that.
Yeah, so that was on Sunday morning. We had to be there. They did 2 tours, so one was at 9 o'clock, one was at 10 o'clock. I did to 10 o'clock. Followed the directions with the sat nav. It was literally like an industrial unit. There was nothing to say it was a Henson thing at all. It was just like a corrugated iron building, and the group of people were gathered outside, and we got to go in just after 10, and we had to leave our mobile phones as soon as we got in. So there was no photograph. There was a couple of areas that you could do some photos, but the actual workshop, you weren't allowed to take any. We went into a large room with a big table, like a conference table, and all around the room was loads and loads of different puppets and characters from lots of different productions over the years. So there was Earl Sinclair and Baby from obviously Dinosaurs. They had 3 of the characters from a UK show, which I think was called Monsters in the Family. They had some Star Wars stuff. They had a wooden carved Jim Henson bust. They had lots of images around the place. So they had like a labyrinth poster, and I just happened to spot on the floor Rugby Tiger from A Christmas Toy. And that kind of made it for me, because I've been watching A Christmas Toy since it first aired, and he was really small. I was expecting him to be quite big, and he was literally like this. So I was down on the floor getting my photo taken with him.
Rugby Tiger, definitely a underrepresented character.
Yeah,
in the Henson pantheon, right? I mean, Christmas Toy gets, gets its fill here. There's there's Emmett Otter, and then by the way, there's the Christmas Toy, which is always quite funny, because being Henson fans for all these years, when I watched the Christmas Toy when it first premiered in the mid '80s, and then seeing Toy Story, the much more famous movie that Pixar made, I could not but help notice the similarity.
Yeah.
They're like,
toys that come to life when people leave a room.
Yeah, I'm like, did I?
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that they changed around, but for the most part, Pixar's pretty much known for their originality, and they really took some liberties. I almost think we should have based on the Jim Henson classic, A Christmas Toy. At the event I was at, the Museum of the Moving Image, they have Mew. You talk about how small Rugby Tiger is. So Mew is this big, and he's hidden in the bottom of this whole cabinet where they have a whole bunch of various puppets from Musicians of Bremen and Fraggle Rock, and all kinds of different things are mixed in there. And then you look real small, oh, there's Mew.
So after seeing the characters and Rugby Tiger on the floor, we were presented with a sort of pitch reel with the work that the Creature Shop has done. It showed lots of familiar characters that we all knew, but some that we didn't know. One of the things that stood out for me, and I think stood out for a lot of fans, was kind of like an animated, film or series with a witch, and it was really funny, and the character was really great. They actually had a puppet version of a witch in the same room, but the actual bit on the screen was like an animation. They did tell us a little bit about it, but I think it was one of those things, they actually said it was quite old and it never unfortunately got produced. which was a shame because it did look really good. After we went through doors and we were then into the creature shop, so we had to leave our mobile phones. We couldn't take them because we weren't allowed to photograph or video anything. And as we went through the doors, we were met by all the puppets from Puppet Up, which were all in a big stand with all the puppet stands on it. And then we went round to the left, and there was workbenches, there was big rolls of fur, there was foam. There were various maquettes all around the workshop. One of the ones that stood out to me was the Gorgs from Fraggle Rock. So they were probably this sort of size, and they had Junior Gorg, and then there were two of Pa, and they were Pa sat in a throne. So I asked what they were for, and for the new Fraggle Rock series, they were going to have Pa always sat in a throne and not actually walking around, which was abandoned later on. But that was quite an interesting idea, and it was great to see these maquettes. And then opposite that, in a box on the floor, were doozer bodies. So latex doozers, and they said that they get sent away to somebody that heat the seam because the latex is done as two halves. So her job is to heat the seam so that when it's flocked, you can't see where the seam was. And then behind that was another box of doozers like this big, and that was the babies that are used when they've got the children in Fraggle Rock. So that was great to see as well. They had the Skeksis prototype for the Age of Resistance, which they used when they were trying to sell the series to Netflix. That was sort of up high with some other characters, and they had a mechanical, like a Waldo type thing, where you and all of us were allowed to have a go doing the levers, and it was basically just like a long stem, like a worm, but the way it moved by doing these cables was absolutely amazing. And there were various other productions around, and then we went into the studio of Robert Bennett, the guy that won the Creature Shop Challenge. He had his whole office where he does all his carving, and because on the Creature Shop Challenge he had made a Skeksis head, so he was very heavily involved in the Age of Resistance and creating all the new characters for that. We then left that room and went through to an area which had loads of artwork on the walls. So there was lots of designs for costumes and puppets and productions, and there was sketches for the Monster Ball for the Lady Gaga tour, which Henson created the creatures for. So it was just like this huge library right away across all these walls of all these various productions. So yeah, just absolutely amazing and just brilliant to see. So yeah, that was really good.
I mean, you were talking about that witch production. It reminded me of this: how many productions the Henson Company not only has worked on, right, that we have been able to see, but how many things they've announced or got into some sort of pre-production phase on, and then it never came to be for whatever reason. So you think like, wow, look at all the stuff that they did, but look at all the stuff that hasn't even come to be yet, and they use that stuff as like a learning tool, for to build other things or to make stories better, or, better connections at different networks, whatever the case may be of why the things ultimately didn't happen. But the productions you listed off there, just in the span of like a room, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the Monsters in My Family. I don't think I've ever seen that. I know it's a UK show, so a lot of people probably are not that familiar with that. But I have seen the characters. Like there's like a big red kind of
big red one, and then there's a green one. Yeah.
Yeah. That, like, you see those things in person. I remember Muppet Fest, and at that they had a small museum set up where they had poser Muppets. They had Kermit, Fozzie, Miss Piggy, Statler and Waldorf, and Rizzo, and Kermit from Muppet Treasure Island. But they also would bring out Creature Shop puppets for the panels, and they had the evil cat from Cats versus Dogs, and they would show how they would manipulate that. Just amazing stuff. So like, I can only imagine when you're sitting in that room and you see like the scale, because the scale of the Muppets is, here. You're talking about you walk in this room and there's life size, if not like larger than life size creatures. Just and some of these things you've grown up with your whole life, like, holy moly, there's a Gorg. There's a Doozer, that's mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure part of the reason why they didn't want you filming in there and photoing is because there's probably some IP, some new production. There's probably something in there that they're working on that like hasn't been released yet. Like, oh, we can't show that off yet. we don't have the clearances,
Yeah,
and whatever else.
they had I think there's probably 3 different workbenches that had things on it which were literally just covered over with a sheet, and we weren't allowed to see. So yeah, definitely something going on there.
Don't even look under there. Nothing for you to see. Don't worry about it. And then like 6 months from now, they'd be like, "Oh, we're working on this show." You're like,
yeah,
I was
that
2
was under
feet
the
from
sheet.
that thing.
Yeah.
That shape looks familiar. I think I saw a ghost that looked like that one.
So the convention was kind of over 2 floors in the Hilton Universal City Hotel.
Which has significance because Universal Pictures originally distributed the movie, right?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, why they maybe had it there. I know Thames kind of likes to have these things in a significant place that means something to the production itself. So I think that's why it was like extra special to have it at the Universal Hilton, because Universal Pictures distributed the movie.
There was a museum set up in one of the rooms upstairs where it had the Chamberlain, and it had Hupp and Deet and loads of costumes, and there was lots of the maquettes. So they had like the Augra maquette there, lots of Podling maquettes. There was the original costumes from the Dark Crystal, which were created and Cheryl Henson modelled back in the 80s, which was kind of like a fashion line, which didn't come to much. But I know it's featured in Dark Crystal books and stuff. Probably about 8 of those costumes.
The plan was to sell them at like Bloomingdale's or something, like some kind of like more higher end retail stores. It's like, wow, you could have been walking down Fifth Avenue in New York and seen a Gelfling. I mean, how cool would that have been?
Yeah. One of the items that they had on display was Jim Henson's waistcoat, and it was based on Jen's waistcoat, and Cheryl was wearing one of the waistcoats as well, but Jim Henson's original one was on display. None of this was behind glass. It was just all like, there was pillars with like tape along. There was signs saying don't touch and stuff, and it was far enough back, but it was just really nice to be able to see these things without the glass in front of them like you do at the museums.
You really get a nice sense of the texture because you don't have that barrier there.
Yeah. And they also had the Wall of Destiny from the original film, which was on display. So again, you could stand literally right next to it and just see it all. And there's still a question about the guy with the beard that had the wings, when it's only usually the female Gelfling that have wings. And I know that came up a few times over the weekend. So that's why they're saying they need Age of Resistance 2, so that can be explored, so we can find out who that was and why there's a bearded Gelfling with wings.
That was in Age of Resistance? There was a bearded Gelfling, or in the original Dark Crystal?
In the original Dark Crystal, so in the wall.
Oh, in the
Wall of Destiny.
Wall. Okay.
Yeah.
As many times as I see the Dark Crystal, I'm gonna have to like rewatch it for the millionth time, and just look at that specific scene and just look at the Wall of Destiny, because I don't remember noticing that the male Gelfling also had wings. I really wish the Henson Company would get into like build their own streaming deal. Like, instead of being this is over at Apple and this is over at Netflix, and this is at Disney, like, here, like, let's make a deal for the whole kit and caboodle, not to buy the company, but just to have the rights to everything. So you would have like, on Disney Plus, as an example, you would just have, instead of Marvel, Star Wars, National Geographic, Jim Henson, and everything that the Henson Company worked on. Maybe you could even cross it with the Muppets a little bit, like Disney stuff, and just have every show that they ever worked on could just be boom in there. That's what they need to really generate some love for that, for the company and these projects, because the audience just gets delineated and shifted because this person doesn't have Apple to watch New Fraggle Rock, and this person doesn't have Netflix to watch like this stuff. The reason I don't consider myself a Muppet collector as much. I consider myself a Henson collector, and that's because the Muppets are fantastic, and believe me, they're my main love of Henson, and they're the main focus of the collection and everything. But the intricacies, the technological advances, the puppetry, the art, all those other things, that's not necessarily from the Muppets itself. That's the Jim Henson Company as a whole, and the other productions and things like that, especially the Dark Crystal, that have blown up and become afterwards. So that's you really need the whole thing to really appreciate what they were able to do with the technology involved. Because now it's like, oh, it's so easy with CGI to like, oh, we want to have this monster. It's 40 feet tall and it's got blah blah. Okay, great, done. Well, back then, like you look at the Greek myths and the Storyteller and the Monster Maker special, like you look at all those shows, they physically made these things and they had to figure out a way to make them look bigger. Or sometimes, like Monster Maker, they actually made a 60-foot character or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really what makes my love of Henson and the Muppets, complete. So I'd really love to see something where they had the UK shows, Ghost of Fafter Hall, which has its moments of brilliance and not so much brilliance.
Yeah.
But like all those things to bring them together. I mean, if the Henson Company could get a deal with Disney Plus to bring, Age of Resistance and a separate series, that would be awesome. Because I think that the fact that it didn't do that well on Netflix is a testament to Netflix's strange way of marketing things. They like push it real early, like, oh, there's magazines and some print ads and maybe a billboard or two, and then it's nothing. And having celebrities voice the characters was a great idea, but use that celebrity to push the show. You have Anya Taylor-Joy, who's like the #1 Hollywood it girl, as the voice of Briar. She's on these talk shows, doing all these other movies. Get her on there and say, hey, watch this show.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you said about being a Muppet fan like I am, and my main collection is Muppets. Second to that is Fraggle Rock, but then it's all linked to the whole Henson Empire, so there is naturally an interest in Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and all the other things that they do, and I kind of picked up on that quite a lot at the convention. There were a lot of fans of Dark Crystal only, but there were also a lot of fans that I spoke to that had pretty much sort of had exactly the same story as me, sort of born in the 70s, grew up with the Muppet Show, then there was the reruns of the Muppet Show, and then Fraggle Rock and Sesame Street, and a lot of people were sort of in the same situation. And then Dark Crystal maybe came later. I think for me it was, I don't know, probably in the mid-80s when it was shown on BBC Two in the UK, and that was probably the first time I ever seen it. So it's, everyone said the same. It's how those things in childhood just seem to latch on to something, and it just resonates with a time that you can't, like a lot of people, you don't forget your childhood, and those characters were such a big part of it.
Well, and the thing about the Muppets and the Henson characters that separates, some people, I'm sure some people, when you say you're a Muppet collector, that aren't quite, they like the Muppets, they enjoyed the movies, they're not like fans, let's say. It's like casual viewers. When you say you collect the Muppets or you're a big Henson fan, they're like, oh, you're into like kiddie stuff. You like the Muppet Babies, or you're into Sesame Street. Like that's kiddie stuff. Why, you're an adult? Like, grow up.
Yeah.
But the difference between the Henson characters and say like Howdy Doody or like some other kind of shows that were just for kids that didn't really kind of grow is that the humor and the heart and the storytelling is so much better. So like when you watch the Muppet Show as a kid, you're like, oh, this is zany and funny. The characters are bright and colorful and all this stuff. And then you watch it 10 years later, 15 years later, whatever it is, as an adult, and you really get to see a whole other part of the show.
Yeah.
There's so much more humor. Like, oh, I didn't get that joke before. That's like a literary joke. I didn't like, no one's going to know that when you're 5 years old or whatever. Right? So, I mean, there's just so much extra going on there that really propels the Henson universe from just being kiddie stuff to like, there's a whole lot. So I think that's what needs to be explored, and like like if the stuff was more readily available, people would see like there's a whole world out there. Like I would love to see more Labyrinth stuff, like a mini series or something set in the world of Labyrinth where you see those characters and their interactions, like maybe an anthology show, so you have a little bit of Sardidimus, all these other characters. What did Ludo do, right? Who did he piss off? To get caught up in that, like there's a whole episode of something right there, right?
They've got such a short bit in the film, but that character could just have its whole world, or it's got its own story.
Right.
So there were just saying about that, about Labyrinth having like a series or something, there were 2 nuggets that came out of a convention. So there was a panel with the producers, which included Lisa Henson, and there was also a panel with Lisa, Cheryl, and Heather. And one of the things that they spoke about was that Lisa Henson is working on or looking into Labyrinth 2. So I know we've kind of been here before and this has been mentioned before, but it was great to hear that it's still in the works and maybe this time it might come off. And the other thing that was mentioned quite a lot through the weekend was Fraggle Rock Series 2 is being filmed in Canada.
That's awesome. I mean, this is a sad state of affairs, but this is the first Henson series in, besides like their preschool series, that has gotten a second season in a long time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately to say, but this is good news. Yeah. So, and you said the Labyrinth too. That's been a rumor for what, 15 years or something. It kind of it's like the Fraggle Rock movie. It like kept popping up and like, oh, it's happening. What's happening? And 5 years later, oh, it's still happening. 5 years later, it's still happening. And then it's like, oh no, now it's a TV show. Fine, as long as something is happening, I'm not going to belittle it. But yeah, Labyrinth too. Of course, I have no idea what the plot of that is yet, but just speculating, it'd be kind of cool if Sarah gets old and it's her daughter that goes through and has to deal with it. She's got to save her own daughter. You know, something else has to happen. Where, you know, she gets in there and then she's like, oh, I got to do this again, and she enlists her friends to help her because the daughter maybe doesn't know who these characters are or whatever. So, I mean, there's so much potential there. Again, each character could have its own separate whole backstory. And there's a lot going on. All right, so at the convention, there was all these panels. We saw all the puppets. Let's talk merch. So there were a bunch of exclusive items released for the convention. Let's talk. Tell me what you saw.
So there was the limited edition print, which was given out to every ticket holder. So that was designed by Corey Godby, who's done some work on a few of the books.
He's well known around here. He is a friend of the blog. We know Corey. He's fantastic.
Yeah, so he designed a poster which was given to every ticket holder. People that had the FRA pass, which was the most expensive, also got a print by Brian Froud, which I think was issued at the last conjunction, but they maybe had some more printed, or they were given out to the FRA pass. So I myself had the Augra pass, which was the next level down. The only difference was that the artwork by Corey wasn't signed. So if you had the FRA pass, it was signed by at least 25 of the celebrities. So that was the only difference between the two tiers. So there was obviously the poster. There were various sort of advertising material when you first went to get your pass, with Weta advertising for the figurines. They were running a raffle to win the Garfin, which somebody was drawn during the closing ceremony. So they got to take that home with them, which was amazing. There was the Fizzgig puppet, which was signed by Lisa Henson. So they were available, and then there were various T-shirts and caps and badges and a few other merchandise bits that you can pick up sort of anywhere, like the Fraggle PVC vinyl line, that sort of thing. I know I picked up a few of the bits for you while I was there, which
I know. Before we get to that, I just want to have one more question about the merch. I know they had the official merch. Was there any vendors there that had any other Henson items?
There were sellers, but it was kind of more like crafters. They were selling stuff similar to the Dark Crystal, so it wasn't actually licensed. So there was a lady had a book series of maybe 6 or 7 books, which was based on a fantasy land. So she was there selling her books. There was somebody there selling crystals, like the amethyst and all the different colored crystals. And then there was somebody doing some sort of sketches and that sort of thing. But as far as actual official license material, it was only really sort of a Dark Crystal logo with the 40 and a few of the merchandise which we've seen elsewhere.
That's really interesting because they have a convention I've been to. I've only been to one of them. They've run it a few times, called Fairy Con, and that's where I've seen Corey a few times, and Cassine Gaines that wrote the the Dark Crystal Visual History, and Toby and Wendy Froud were there. And it's the same kind of thing where, you know, because that's, and it's not even a Dark Crystal event proper, right? So they're a part of this, and all the merch around it is, you know, based on fairies and you know, their own intellectual property and all sort of stuff. So I was kind of wondering, you know, if this was going to be more like Muppet Fest, where they only had one other vendor there, but selling more like vintage stuff. So I was wondering if there's anything like that. So that's interesting that there was more of like giving independent artists a voice on a platform, which is that's an interesting take on that too, because I think that really, you know, you have these fantasy lovers there. Maybe they would like this, and it's nothing to do with Henson, and that's a very Henson thing to do. You know what I mean? Like that's not a whole lot of people would invite people that have, you know, their own concepts and their own kind of take on your merchandise to be there to, you know, give those people and those artists a platform. So that's really cool.
Yeah, there was nothing vintage. There were no sort of vintage stalls. Corey was there with some of his books for sale, and Cassian Gaines was there with his books. Unfortunately, his shipment of the new ET book hadn't arrived, so he didn't have any of those there, unfortunately, at the event, which was a shame. Tim Clark was there, who designed the first travelling mat, and he also designed the Boglins, which for a lot of people in the 80s, I'm sure, remember those. He's kind of relaunched those, so he had some of those there for sale. So yeah, there were a few other bits that you could buy.
Tim, Cassine, and Corey are all friends of the block. Tim has actually been here in the museum. These are all guys I know.
Yeah.
And it's a shame. You know, you think like, you know, with the ET books not showing up, you could like, oh, let's just go to Barnes and Noble and we'll just buy like every copy they have and bring them over. That's a shame. So you did send me some stuff. So let me get the box here. Now you told me that there are some exclusive things in this box that I mean, I know of some of the stuff, but I don't know about everything. And I have patiently waited to open this box. I have not seen what's in it. It's been a couple of weeks, and it's been sitting there mocking me. Any day, open this up. So I'm going to open it up now.
And I hope it's worth a wait.
I think it will be. I'm not even gonna like look in. I'm gonna pull out something and we're gonna talk about it. I have no idea what I'm pulling out. All right, so the first thing is like this little tube poster. And it is, oh, look at this. It's a Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock print. What do you think about the new Moki? What do you think about that? Did that come up at all? New Moki?
I'm not sure. I kind of see that they've made her a bit more adventurous. There are times where she reminds me of Miss Piggy. When Miss Piggy loses it outside in the Muppets 2011, I can't remember the scene. They're stood outside in the street and she loses it. And there was a scene that Moki did recently, but I was watching, and it was kind of just like very, very similar. And I remember reading that they never wanted a Miss Piggy type character in Fraggle Rock. So there wasn't meant to be a sort of strong female character, but I kind of feel like that's the way Moki's gone a bit.
Well, I had read that they wanted to make her less of a hippie. For some reason, they wanted to make her less hippie, less marmish, less like motherly figure. And, you know, she was always a little taller. So they wanted to shrink her down and bring her all kind of have all of them be the same kind of size and level, which I kind of see the mentality behind. But I actually think they made her more of a hippie. Like she's sitting there floating. She's doing like yoga poses. Like, how did you make her less of a hippie? You made her less tall. You made her less, you know, put them all at even keel. I'm not quite sure about New Moki. I don't know. I'm not.
Maybe she'll develop in the next series.
Right. Let's see. Yeah. Maybe they'll expand upon New Moki and make her, you know, something else. All right. So then we have. This is the program. We have the Great Con-Junction, the Dark Crystal 40th Anniversary Celebration, November 12th, 2022, and on the back it has the schedule of events, and it opens up and shows a map of where everything was at the convention center. So were different events happening concurrently? You could go upstairs and see one thing, you go downstairs and see something else?
Yeah, a few things overlapped, not many. So there were workshops. So Corey Godby did like a drawing workshop, and JM Lee did a writer's workshop. At various times, they were about an hour and a quarter long, and then there were various panels and talks. So most of it was spread over the day, but I think one or two did overlap. So you had to kind of plan what you wanted to do. Some of them were ticketed, so it was maybe another $10 to go. But most of it was all free. And then there was the cosplay judging. All the panels were free with the talks. There was a Skeksis talk, which was Skeksis performers, and then there was a Mystic talk, and then there was the producers, and then there was the puppeteers, and there were various ones like that throughout the 2 days where they talked specifically about their role in either the film or the new series.
All right, next item is this. Ooh, the quick bites. This is the menu: crispy chicken wings, chipotle chicken sandwich, chicken quesadilla with fries, pepperoni flatbread, the outlaw burger, steak nachos. How come that doesn't seem like they're not like fried Nebri or something? It should almost seem like they should have made that Dark Crystal theme. But
yeah, I wondered where Nebri was.
Yeah, like why isn't Nebri on the menu? Come on. But on the other side, there's the drink menu. And that seems to be more Dark Crystal themed. The Skeksil's Spicy Margarita, which has tequila blanco jalapeno, fresh lime juice, Cointreau, agave, prickly pear syrup, and tagine on the rim. And we have the Darkening, which is Kraken rum, ginger beer, and lime juice. The Crystal Mojito with a blueberry twist. And the Dark Crystal Delight is champagne with a blackberry twist. I think I might like that Dark Crystal Delight. That sounds delicious. Did you have any of these?
That's the one I tried.
The Dark Crystal Delight.
Yeah.
And I have to ask, was it delightful?
Of course.
All right. Well, as long as it holds up to its name. All right. So there's another poster in here. Oh, wow. Look at this. So this is the poster you were talking about. This is the Corey Godby limited edition print. And I guess it was on a giant banner they had there as well.
He did have a big, huge version behind which everyone signed, and that's actually up for auction now in the UK. So the organisers, Thames.com, are auctioning that at the moment.
And he signed this one as well, looks like, right?
Yeah, I'm going to sign it for you.
Corey's a great guy. So he's been at, like I said, numerous events, and I see him, and he's always just the coolest dude. And the artwork that he does for these books is just fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love the detail, like in the Skeksis beak. Like just that alone is just amazing.
So there's my copy.
Oh, yeah, yours is signed by a few other people, but yeah, that's
a few others on there. But, yeah, great artwork. And I managed to get it home safely without creasing it.
That's a feat in of itself. I actually sent some things to the convention too to get signed. And I have a vintage Dark Crystal poster that I'd already previously had signed by Steve Whitmire and Wendy Froud. I got Louise Gold to sign it this time, as well as Lisa Maxwell and Stephen Garlick, who were the voices of Jen and Kira. So I got a mix on there. And then I wanted to do something completely spontaneous to them, like something that they really wouldn't expect to receive as something to sign. So I had Louise Gold sign a Ghost of Fafter Hall print as you get a Fafter. I'm sure that must have been like, who is this nut job that is sending this in? Like no one even knows what this show is. And so I'm hoping she appreciated that, just like, oh, someone's deep into the Henson canon and Henson lore, and someone has done their due diligence.
Yeah. The first time I met Louise Gold was at a Labyrinth screening at the Little Angel Theatre in London. And we got there and we went in to sit down, and we were sat on these benches, and then these people came in and sat in the benches right in front of us. And it was Louise Gold with her family, I think it was. And I just I leaned forward and I said, could I get your autograph with Annie Sue Pig, please? And she was like, oh, wow, Annie Sue. So, yeah. And I've seen her a couple of times since then. So I didn't actually get her to sign anything at the convention because I've got various bits signed from her before. So, yeah, I could have, but there's only so many.
From what I saw, the prices of these autographs at this show weren't as astronomical as they can be at other places. They can get really crazy for some of these celebrities. And the Henson people will sign these things. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but if you spot them at an event or out in public or something, they usually don't charge you to do these kind of things. They're more than happy to sign something for you. You know, they'll kind of scold you, say, please don't put this on eBay or something like that. But if it's really for you, they're more than happy to do that for most of the performers and all. When you see them at a convention, there's like contracts involved. There's all kinds of people that are involved that have to get them there. That they have to help support and pay. So they have to charge something just to facilitate all that. So, and I get that. So that's what makes it a little cost prohibitive to get everybody to sign.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I mean, I would love to have them sign my Age of Resistance poster. Now you're talking like $500 or something for all that.
Yeah.
All right.
Most of I think it was sort of most of the older people that were on the original series were charging $40 for a signature, $40 for a photo, or it was like a combination where you could get both for $60. A lot of the people that performed on Age of Resistance were $25, and again, same for a photo, or sort of $40 for both. But even at the convention, what was odd was if you've seen them at their desk, they charged you. If you've seen them in the room next door and say, can I get a photo? They're like, yeah, sure, of course you can. So you don't actually have to pay for it. So I got a photo with Kevin Clash, which I didn't pay for, but I did pay to get him to sign one of the items I took. So it is a bit odd that you can just go up to them and get them to sign it. Whereas if you've seen them outside at their desk, you'd have to pay for it.
That's how it was at Muppet Fest. You were allowed to bring one item, and there was a table, and they had a thing like, okay, now this is the autograph time, and everyone like lined up and got their one item, and you could have it signed by as many or as little people as you wanted.
Yeah.
You know, boom, 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 down the line. But then I saw Jerry Nelson and a few other people in the hallway. I was like, well, I have this other thing. Could you sign this? I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. So like, it's odd. But yeah, they didn't even charge for that big group signing. It was just you were already paid for to get in, and that was it. I mean, the world has changed. And it's been 20 something years since Muppet Fest. Now they realized, oh, people will pay us money to sign our autograph.
Yeah. There were two signings, one on each day. So the Henson daughters didn't charge. Toby Froud didn't charge. Hallie Stanford didn't charge. So there were several people that didn't charge anything throughout the whole thing, and they just took it in turns on the 2 days, and it was like an hour. So very similar. People had to queue up. There wasn't a limit on what you could get signed, but there was somebody monitoring, sort of like, that's enough now, move along, sort of thing.
Right.
But yeah, it was good.
Believe me, that's usually me. I have a stack of things like, how many things? This is the last one. Okay, you're fine.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was a bit like that with Lisa Henson.
This guy. Those people are there because of people like me.
Yeah,
no doubt. All right, and this is the Dark Crystal 40th Anniversary Limited Edition pin that was an exclusive to the convention. It's like in a matchbook. Like it pops out the back. That's interesting. Like it's like a tabbed in, and that with the there's a QR code in here. If you open this up, how do I open it? I don't want to rip it, but here we go. There's a QR code. We'll put this up. Scan this QR code for more Henson products from Little Shop of Pins. You're not going to get this one because this is a limited edition and it was only available at the convention. But their Little Shop of Pins has a lot. They have Fraggle Rock, they have Dark Crystal, they have Labyrinth. So definitely check them out. That's cool that they made a pin like that for the event. And it's that nice packaging too. I really am impressed with this because usually it's just like a pin back. I would expect that QR code to just be on the back here, but no, actually like inside this whole thing. Like I said, it looks like an old style matchstick book, you know? The other exclusive was this hat. So you had the Dark Crystal 4th Anniversary logo on the front, and on the back it says the anniversary celebration November 12th and 13th in Hollywood, California.
So a lot of the merch you could actually pre-order before you went. So I'd ordered a few bits, and when I got there and bought the cap, I think it was literally like an hour later the caps had all sold out. So that was really good to get that one. There was still a few pins left, But I did email and say, is the cap embroidered or is it just like a print on the front? Because the embroidery is so much nicer. And then they said it was embroidery. So I'm like, yeah, I'm getting that. But the only T-shirt that was embroidered was actually the long sleeve T-shirt. All the others were just printed, which was a shame.
And to only have 2 pieces of exclusive merch, or 3, only a few things of exclusive merch, you kind of want them to be, high quality to make the purchase worth it. Here's the lanyard that has the Great Con-Junction and all the information. And then we have the Gelfling pass. That was the lowest pass.
I think that may have been lower. I think it might have been the Fizzgig pass was the lower one. So I don't think that's the whole set because they didn't have the whole set left.
Okay.
But there were a couple of others.
We should preface this by saying after the convention was over, you could buy unsold tickets or unsold passes because it was over. So they didn't care. You're not going to spend a couple $100 for the pass anymore because the event was over. So you could buy the unused passes. So the Fizzgig one must have been the most popular pass, so they didn't have any of those left over.
Yeah, the Fra one had gone because they were probably only a few made for the people that were attending. But the artwork on all the passes is also by Corey Godby, and you can see the image is actually taken from the poster. So
we have Jen, Kira, and Fizzgig, and the Crystal Shard on the Gelfling one. This is the Augur pass, and you can see Augur on there. Again, the artwork and the detail is just spectacular. Who's next here? Here we have the Chamberlain is on the Skeksis. I mean, he's obviously the most famous of the Skeksi. I don't think anyone's like, ooh, where's the Goramon? Give me the Goramon. I need the Goramon. Or the scientist. Give me the scientist. I want the Emperor when his face is like, dying and crumbling. That's the guy I want on my pass. All right, so then we have the Mystic Pass, and you can see again the hair, just the detail in the hair alone is just spectacular. Oh, and then there also is one here. This one, you know how much I love my mint condition stuff. I know I wouldn't consider these not mint condition, but even mintier, if you can get mintier, of course, is this one where it's unpunched. I mean, that is just, there's crazy. And then there's extra crazy, right? So when you said, I found you one that's not even been punched, I'm like, wow, that's now
I was so worried it was going to fall out while I was like carrying it around or something. I'll take it out of the bag and the little bit had fell out, but luckily it stayed there. And I think I got the same. So, yeah. I got one too.
These are probably the ones they didn't quite sell as much of it all, so they had just they didn't even put them on the lanyard. So here's just the stack of the crystal passes. Somebody will want these that are unpunched. Some crazy collector out there will want these because they're crazy and look, it matches my sweater. I'm wearing a dark crystal sweater that matches my sweater. Look, it's brilliant. Not a whole lot of detail on the crystal, but I mean, what are you going to do? While you were out in LA, you mentioned it was a whole week-long trip. So you also made a trip to Disneyland while you were there. And there was more Muppet stuff. Obviously not Henson, but more Muppet stuff to be found.
A little bit.
At Disney. Well, unfortunately, they don't have a whole lot. They keep doing these things where everything's limited edition now. Everything's behind a paywall. You got to be a D23 subscriber. You got to be something else over there. But there were a couple of things that you could just walk into any store and pick up. And in the Wonderland Gallery, you found a couple large-scale prints. And while those are fairly expensive and would have been pretty hard for you to get back to me from there, they did have smaller postcard versions. So here we have the Muppet Show print by Gerard Mariuma. And I really like this artwork. I like how Pigs in Space and Vets Hospital are represented. What I found odd, though, was while you have Animal down here, there wasn't the Electric Mayhem. It's like, what? You have Vets Hospital and Pigs in Space and Animal, but not the Electric. You could have put them all in there. You get Janice from Vets Hospital and Animal. You get a few of the band in there, and you get Rolf from Vets Hospital too. So you get a little bit, but yeah, a little like, oh man, because my jam is Dr. Teeth all day, every day. When I don't see Dr. Teeth on some Muppet Show merch, I'm like, Missed opportunity. But that's awesome. And then we have a very Muppet bike ride by Bill Robinson. And this is, I guess, sort of a homage to the bike riding scene in the Great Muppet Caper, obviously. However, you have Pepe and Rizzo included, which obviously were not in that scene. But guess who is included? Dr.
Teeth.
So that was very cool. There was a few other Dark Crystal stuff I just saw here as well. You mentioned the Gartham that was auctioned off. That's a What a Workshop Gartham, right? So that's what this one is. And on the back here, they show a whole bunch of other characters you can get. These range from the epic minifigures they have to the large scale bust and statues that can get fairly expensive. I saw some of the Skeksis were like almost $1,000. I think they're Labyrinth. They have a Labyrinth with Jareth and the staircase and Sarah and Toby, and it's like over $1,000. So I like to keep things a little more contained and grounded. I don't go too crazy. Do you have any of these busts or any of these statues?
No, I've not got those.
I bought Deet. They had like a pretty decent sale. So it was like, oh, I can get, when you say I got Deet on sale, it sounds like you're going to the store and buying chemicals to kill bugs or something. But yes, I bought a Deet on sale because I just really loved the way the sculpt was and the way her wings were just kind of flowing out there. Like the way it was done was just gorgeous. So like, if I want to get like one, that'd be the one. I believe it was the Archer. I was really thinking about that because I really liked the pose. It was real dynamic. These are not small, but again, because it's not small, it was like over $500. So like,
yeah, they had a lot of them on display. The detail was amazing. I mean, the Gartham was probably sort of like this tall. It was huge, and its eyes lit up.
Oh,
but
wow!
The detail was amazing. So, but yeah, they are pricey.
Yeah, I'm hoping that at some point in time they have the sculpts, right? I'm hoping they could take the sculpt, take those molds, and just give us like smaller versions that were maybe in the $50 to $100 to $200 range, like somewhere in that range, instead of the you bought the 1,000. Oh, those were limited to 500 of those, 1,000 of them, whatever it was, limited edition quantity was. But we'll make these in a little bit larger quantities, and they won't be as expensive, and they won't be as as collectible. So you have the crazy ones, but other fans can at least put these on their shelves as well, and enjoy that detail because it's incredible. But that's not the only thing that was in this package. I just happened to see there was a pen from the Jim Henson Company in there as well. So this is an official Henson Company pen. I do have a few Henson Company items like this. You got one as well.
I got one too.
How could you pass it up? You see that sitting there like, oh, this is amazing because you're not buying this anywhere else. You're only going to get this right from the Henson Company, and this is like an employee-only thing, basically. Maybe they give it out to like guest stars or something, but you don't see this at your local CVS.
No,
or when you're buying pens, this is not one of the options you get to choose from.
So in the Henson lot, they actually had a shop. So it's like, that's great. Get all the Muppet fans to the Henson lot, and then say, look, we've got a shop. So Lisa Henson had cleared out somewhere. There was lots of Muppet merchandise. There were Palisades playsets, Palisades figures. There were stationary cubes from Dakin with Kermit on every side, which I'd never seen. Lots of other bits. And there was some Dark Crystal stuff and Labyrinth and Fraggle Rock. Then there was a pot of pens. And then in one corner there was clothing from Jim Henson Company. So there was the cap. And there were hoodies and sweatshirts, that sort of thing. And I think there was a knitted beanie with Jim Henson Company on it. So one of the other things that I did find in there was the Art of the Muppets, the book, which I've already had, but it was absolutely mint condition in a stack. So never been looked at. And that was like $20, which I bought, that then luckily did manage to get signed by Lisa, Cheryl, and Heather. So that was great fun, and just great to have it in such mint condition.
Well, that book was put out in the early 80s and was hard to find for a long time. And it was crazy money on eBay for like not super minty condition. And they must have found some in a warehouse or something, because Craig Shemin did an event a few years ago, and that was like the giveaways. And I was like, Craig, do you have any more of those books? Like, oh yeah, we have a stack of them. I'm like, what? They're like, this amazing. Like, so
yeah.
when they did that, I didn't realize they had a shop on the lot now. That's really nice. I did not know that. So next time there's an event in the lot, maybe I'll go to one of those Stuffed and Unstrung Puppet Up events. You'd be like, oh yeah, you got any more of that Muppet stuff hanging out in the back?
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, those Palisade figures, the figures can go for a bit, but the play sets are just going for astronomical prices. So if you can, you find yourself a good deal on one of those play sets there, holy mackerel, you could make some bank. You could probably have paid for your thrall pass. You paid for the whole thing off of Palisade's Muppets.
A lot of the merch was priced accordingly. So none of it was cheap. I think somebody had done some research and kind of knew what these things were going for. When
they first brought the Henson exhibit to the Museum of the Moving Image, which we'll talk about in a minute, they would put these things out there for like retail of the era. Whatever was out there, like, oh, this is like $20. There's like, a Fraggle Rock lunchbox, mint condition, thermos, the whole thing, $20. I'm like, you do know that goes for like $60 plus on eBay.
Yeah.
This is like super expensive. Like, you do know. And they only had one of them. So like, you couldn't buy a whole bunch and resell them. This is for me. But like I told him, you may need to up your pricing. And I'm like, I know this is going to hurt me in the long run because I'm going to be the one shouting out the cash for it. But you could get a little more money for the museum if you just raise them a little bit. Like, no one ever tells you to raise the price. But like these prices are like ridiculous. Now they up them up and they're like, now I can't. Now I'm not buying that. It's too expensive now.
Yeah.
Like I said, hurt myself. But some of these things, they're finding them in the warehouse. Like, you could totally sell these things for crazy money. They felt like the Center for Puppetry Arts has the same thing. They found a whole bunch of like old Fraggle Rock PVC figures. They were getting hard to find. They're like, oh, boom, $2 a piece. Right?
Yeah.
I will take all of these. All right, so I should talk about the event I was at now, right? So speaking of MoMI, speaking of Museum of the Moving Image, on the other side of the country, the same weekend, if you're a D23 member, they had an exclusive event after hours at the Museum of the Moving Image to celebrate the Muppet Christmas Carol's 30th anniversary. They had a couple of special guests. Fred Buchhold, who was the stunt coordinator, as well as Peter McKinnon, who was a Muppet builder. They had a whole Q&A before the film. So they would talk about how things were made. They showed a lot of behind the scenes photos that they themselves took. So these are not publicly available photos. They showed us how they had made Rizzo. When Rizzo gets frozen in the bucket of water and it comes out as a ratsicle. So they showed us that, and they had made these ratsicles that were made out of wax. They had to be kept cold because it was so hot in the studio that the wax would melt. So they showed us these Rizzo popsicles in a cooler to just keep the wax looking perfect. They only made a couple of them. So they only had a couple of tries to make this work. These guys had to figure this out. Like, this is going to work. We've tested it out beforehand. You yell action. This is going to happen. At my event, they gave out exclusive merch too, but they only gave out one per person, even though they had extras. I tried to snag you one of these and they would not let me have it. I'm like, my buddy's grabbing me stuff on the other side of the country. But so this is a Polly Smith print from the archives of Gonzo's costume and how it looks from the back. And I got it signed by Fred Buchholz, who was the Muppet stunt coordinator. So we signed it right in the corner here. They're coming out with more D23 exclusives for Muppet Christmas Carol. There's all kinds of pins and a set of postcards that are based on these concept sketches. Amazing stuff.
Did you see there was 2 of the originals up for sale on auction? I think it was Janice and Floyd. Although I think I might have been from Treasure Island, actually, not Christmas Carol, but it was the original sketches, the same style as that Gonzo one.
Muppet Christmas Carol is, of course, I'm not sure if this would be blasphemous to say, but like a much better film than Muppet Treasure Island. I don't I mean, Muppet Treasure Island's okay. Muppet Christmas Carol, it's like there's a lot more going on there.
Yeah.
But the costumes for both of those productions is out of this world because they're all period costumes. And Polly Smith was not at this event that I was at, but she was at the D23 Expo they had, and they showed a clip of her talking about how she had to kind of put all this stuff together. She really didn't really know what she was gonna quite do, and she didn't have a whole lot of time. So she researched period clothing, and then didn't quite know how she was gonna make rat size puffy shirts, all this stuff. So she would have the assistant start doing the shirts, and then she would start building the other fanciful layers on top afterwards. So it was like a whole thing, and it was really interesting to hear how these things, kind of happen.
I was just grabbing. That's actually part of Miss Piggy's dress from the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh wow!
So I think this fabric was created by the workshop and printed or silk screened, whatever. So it wasn't just something that was bought off a shelf. It was actually made and designed for Miss Piggy. So that's from her actual dress. Pretty cool.
So those of you watching at home, you're not going to find that at your local craft store.
No.
that is Miss Piggy's dress. I mean, I wouldn't put it past you if you saw Miss Piggy and you saw that costume. Oh, I'm going to just put that in there. No one saw that.
No.
No one's going to miss that piece of that little fabric swatch now. All right. So 2 separate Muppet events, 2 different coasts. Actually, there's one more thing I need to show you. On my adventures in New York, before I got to the event proper, I walked around Brooklyn to kind of get see like some vintage toy stores and walk around. And I found this dark crystal trading cards box sitting in the window at the store. And I said, what do you want for that dark crystal trading card box? He goes, for you? Well, he didn't know who I was, but he's like, if you're interested in that, it's just kind of like taking up space for them. For you, here you go. So I'm like, wow, free dark crystal stuff. It's a little sun faded, but still really cool. Of course, I have one of these filled with all the cards still, but I mean, what an just crazy find, just sitting there, like, and of course, just given to me. That's what fandom and collecting is all about. Like the crazy stories you hear, the generosity of other collectors that, like, what, I can see you're interested in that. No one else has cared about that in years. It's been sitting there. Please just get it out of my store.
Yeah.
but make sure it takes up space in your life. And so very, there's nothing on the back. It's just a blank back. But yeah, this opened up this way, and you could put all the you could display, in the store, and all the cards would be in there. So I did pick up some dark crystal stuff while you were picking up other dark crystal stuff across the country. So I was like, oh, I got to show Chris this, because the kismet of the whole thing, 2 Muppet events, 2 coasts, and and somewhat dark crystal related at the end of the day.
Amazing.
We're going to do a whole thing some other time. We're going to talk about his collection, because his collection is amazing. It probably puts mine to shame. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I know it's much more Muppet focused than mine, because I have some dark crystal. I mean, I have some other Henson things, but yours is primarily, except for obviously a few things you picked up at the convention, primarily Muppet focused.
Yeah.
So we will do another video another time where we're going to show off Chris's magnificent Muppet collection. Because as you can see, look, it's impressive.
So I couldn't not mention Traveling Matt, because this is one I made.
Right.
So
I was going to say,
when I got the tickets,
we always, you've seen my videos. We always try to do like a little one up. Oh, but there's more. So this is Chris's one up. There's more. I saw the pictures of you and Uncle Traveling Matt at the convention. I was like, wow, that's a really interesting Traveling Matt. I'm wondering why he's getting to be this close to Traveling Matt to bring him around. And then when I asked you about it, you're like, no, I made this. So this is a handmade Uncle Traveling Matt. But I will tell everybody here, it's pretty much identical. It looks amazing.
So here he is. And when I got the tickets to the convention, I was like, what shall I take? And I've never made any dark crystal replicas. I have made Fraggles. And because Tim Clark was going, who built the original, and obviously the Hensons were there that own the property, and there was a little rumor that Dave Goelz might be there, even though he was never announced, and also Kevin Clash, who actually performs him in the new series. So he's now his performer, even though Dave Goelz still does the voice. So I thought, I'm going to make Traveling Matt and take him. And I'm also traveling from the UK to LA. So I made him in about 6 weeks, I think, before I went. And I shown Tim Clark, and I shown Lisa Henson and Cheryl Henson, and they absolutely loved him. And then one of the panel talks, Dave Goelz did actually come to, and he's very COVID sensitive at the moment, so he didn't want to hang around and he didn't meet fans. When the talk ended, I literally made a beeline for the stage with Traveling Matt, and I was like, Dave, and he came over. He stood back a bit, and I performed Traveling Matt while Dave Goelz was behind me voicing him. So that was pretty amazing.
That's worth the price of admission right there. That is amazing. I mean, and he looks so good. I mean, from the scarf to the jacket. You even got the shoes. Are those like kids' boots you bought? Like
they're kids' shoes. Yeah, everything else is made, but no, not boots. That's going a bit too far. But yeah, the rest
But
of
I
it's
mean,
all
they
made.
look exactly as they do on the show. I mean, that's really, really spectacular.
Good, thank you.
I mean,
So yeah, it was well worth taking in.
Did you have a like a pattern? Did you just do it like you took pictures from the show and kind of like figured it out yourself? How did that all come about?
Yeah, so I've been making probably about 10 years now. I think the first one I made was using the old Butterick licensed patterns, and I had a go, and that was the very first one. And the head's pretty big, but the rest of it's pretty good. And then it just kind of developed from there. So I sort of tweaked it, and there were various YouTube videos, and there was the unboxing series where they showed Wembley Fraggle's head pattern and stuff like that.
Wow, a convincing John. So that's one of the puppets they have on display at the Museum of the Moving Image, and that where Mew is, the top is Convincing John. He's one of my favorites. He's a Jim Henson character that's crazy off the wall. There was a salesman and a series of ads here in the U.S. In the early '80s called Crazy Eddie, and he was out in New York, and he made these crazy commercials where he would like just be like, you gotta come buy my stereo, my prices are insane.
Crazy Eddie's smashing prices to smithereens on everything in his humongous inventory. It's Crazy Eddie's greatest clearance sale ever, going on now at all great Crazy Eddie locations with prices that are insane.
That must have been so much fun for Henson to perform, because it's just like let go and just go totally nuts.
Yeah, so yeah, I've made a few, and I'll probably make more, and I'm hoping to make Cantus at some point.
We are like connecting here. I was just like, my vote would be for Cantus. Like, if you could make Cantus, because he is probably one of my favorite Muppets of all time too. Like Dr. Teeth and Cantus are like the yin and the yang of each other, right? I guess you could say Dr. Teeth and Rolf are like that too, but like he's much more cerebral, and it's like, there are no rules, and those are the rules.
Those are the rules. And I think that Christmas episode as well is just one of the ones that really sticks in my mind from being a kid, like 7 years old, with the Christmas tree decorated and the excitement of Christmas, and then watching that episode. So, and again, that character was only in a few episodes, like Convincing John. So not many people know of him apart from the fans.
I think with the new show, they have Jambalin, and I know it's not supposed to take Cantus's place, even though it kind of does, but I would like to see if, an episode where, Cantus kind of comes through, and maybe he could be voiced by Bill Beretta, because it's like the same kind of Dr. Teeth-esque Rolf voice. You find out that they're cousins or they're brothers or whatever the relationship there is, and then you don't need to see Cantus that much anymore, but just kind of explain, weave those two together.
Yeah.
Like, who is this guy, and why is he with the minstrels? But they're not called the minstrels; they're called something else, even though they look just like the minstrels. Like, what? How did this whole thing come about? All right, is there anything else you want to show? I see something.
Yeah, so I was just going to quickly show some of the things that I got signed. There's that one there, which was Hallie Stanford and Lisa Henson and Robert Bennett and Pete Brook. And then this poster I took with me. So I'd already had this signed by some people. So I already had Wendy and Brian Froud, and I managed to get Toby Froud on there as well. And Louis Gold had already signed it, and Warwick Brownlow Pike, and Neil Storenberg. So yeah, quite a few on there, which is good. And that was the poster that came with the SFX magazine, which is double-sided.
I have a poster like that. I'm not sure if it's that one, but I know I have a Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. But I had Warwick and Cheryl and a couple people sign it, because they did an event at the Museum of Moving Image as well.
Okay.
And I should say that the Museum of the Moving Image still has their Dark Crystal Age of Resistance exhibit as well. So there's a Jim Henson exhibit, and separate to that is the Age of Resistance, and they have a bunch of Gelflings, a bunch of Skeksis. Obviously, they're big characters as it is, and they have them on these giant platforms, so they're like towering above you. It's a sight to see. So next time you're in, the States, you got to come and check that thing out. That's a really great exhibit. And also Atlanta. You got to do like a whole trip across the country. New York, Atlanta, and then LA, and you can see all the Henson stuff that's on display.
A little bit like your Ghost of Fafnir for Louise. That's the one I took for Kevin Clash to sign. So he also signed Leon, and then I took that with me for Toby Froud. So
Oh
I
yeah,
got that
there
one
he is
signed.
right there. Of course, for those of you that don't know, Toby Froud, the son of designers and puppet builders Wendy and Brian Froud, who were the concept designers for the Dark Crystal Labyrinth, their son Toby was the baby in Labyrinth. So that's literally a picture of him as a kid, and it's from the movie. You know who Toby reminds me of?
No, go on.
The Babe.
Oh dear. How did I not get that?
Babe with the power of do what? Run me the Babe. Come on, everybody knows that. I thought I could get you. I thought I could.
Yes.
All right, so what
So,
else we got here? Sorry.
a little book. Thought it'd be quite cool if I could get that signed to me from Cheryl.
Nice.
So got that one, and then these I got signed. So we've got the 2 signatures in this one, which is there, and then again in this one. So J.M. Lee signed that one for me, and finally I took this one. So I think it was back in like the early 90s. I made a trip to London and tried to get into the London Creature Shop, and I couldn't get in, but I did manage to get a copy of Muppet Variety, which is or was the Henson newsletter at the time. And down in the bottom corner was this little bit about a new book coming out by Cheryl Henson called Muppets Make Puppets. So I've had this book a very long time, but I took it and got Cheryl to sign that one as well. And I told her that story, which she really liked, so that was good.
That was actually the first, I think, yeah, I'm almost positive, yes, the first Muppet item I ever had signed. Cheryl Henson was doing a book tour for that book in my area when I was in high school. In the 90s. And yeah, I went there and met Cheryl. She signed that, and she signed my Jim Henson the Works book. And she signed my Henson the Works book, giant, like took up the entire page. Thanks for being a Muppet appreciator, Cheryl Henson. So I seen her a couple of times over the years, but when I brought the book to the Momi event for the Dark Crystal thing, she was there, and I showed her, I'm like, well, Cheryl, I want to just thank you again for signing this. And and she looked at it, she goes, oh, if I had known you were going to get more people to sign, I would have shrunk it down a little bit. I'm like, I don't care. It's hilarious. You just, I mean, literally, you John Hancock that thing, like, I'm taking over. So
yeah,
I think you were first, because otherwise, no one else was going to fit the. But yeah, the Muppets Make Puppets, I still have mine, like just like you, still with all the eyeballs and the fur, all still complete.
They're quite hard to find now with that still attached.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because we're crazy people.
Yeah,
we didn't make the Muppets they asked us to make, or if we did, we used other supplies and didn't ruin the book.
Yeah.
Everybody else ripped that thing right off.
One other thing that Lisa Henson said when I was showing her Traveling Matt, and I obviously had a Fraggle Rock t-shirt, and she was like, do you think there'd be a call for a Fraggle Rock convention? And I was like, yes, definitely. I said, just not in LA, because I've been there. I said, need to go somewhere else. She's like, but we could do that in Calgary, in Canada. So it's like, if that happens, that's where it came from.
I like that idea. I think that a Fraggle Rock convention, that'd be awesome. And yeah, again, doing it where they filmed it, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But again, my whole thing is, why doesn't the Henson Company just do a freaking
Henson
convention?
Yeah.
Like, the whole Henson universe, Dark Crystal panel, Labyrinth panel, Fraggle Rock panel, like the whole thing. Do it all. Like, I love it. That's my thing. There's my suggestion. We'll do the Fraggle Rock panel. We'll get the silly creatures involved. Hen Con. I love it. That's what we got to do.
Yeah. That's the impression I got. There were lots of people that were just there because they were fans of Henson in general. And yeah, I think a convention for everything Henson and get a bit of everything, and like you say, all the different people, and have all the different puppets and stuff on display would be really good.
The Henson Company doing their own would be awesome. But if they really want to get crazy, they could, work with Disney and have like a separate section or do something where they had, here's and here is this thing you might have heard of. It's called, I don't know, the Muppets. and they're over here.
Yeah.
They have a nice working relationship, it seemed. Like they worked on Earth to Ned. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to make that show anymore, but that was great. So they had this relationship that they could easily expand upon. So we'll see. One of these days, we'll see. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Chris O'Connor, thank you so much for being here. We will do something else and show off your collection, because we didn't even even scratched the surface here. This is not even the tippy tip of the iceberg was touched here. Do you have any social media? Is there anything you want to plug?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I've got a page called Puppets Co, which where I put all the images of the characters that I make. So yeah, go and find it.
We will put those links down in the description below so everyone can find you and follow your amazing replicas. That traveling Matt was spot on. We could put them side to side and be hard to tell the difference. And of course, after we were done, I found one more item Chris sent along as a special gift. It is this vintage 1979 Sweetums Hallmark greeting card that was a UK exclusive. And you know how much I love my UK exclusives. Yes, a UK exclusive Hallmark Sweetums greeting card from 1979. And it is blank inside, so you can put whatever you want in there. So I want to say thank you, Chris, for telling us all about your amazing trip to the Great Con-Junction. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Follow us on all our social media channels. Leave a comment down below and let me know what your favorite item from this video was, and I'll see you next time from the MuppetStuff Museum.
Thanks a lot.